Meanwhile, the Department of Basic Education is embarking on a plan to strengthen the curriculum within the next 5 years. This is in an effort to recalibrate South Africa's education system after the negative impact of COVID-19. Here to talk to us more on this, I'm joined by Godwin Khosa, CEO of the National Education Collaboration Trust. Mr. Khosa, good evening. Thank you very much for your time. The National Education Collaboration Trust, by and large, a civil society organization partnering with government, business and other stakeholders within the sector, all in pursuit of that national goal to better education outcomes and direct, I suppose, the agenda around the reforms that are required at this particular time. What inputs are you currently bringing on board in this conversation around the changing or even the revitalization and reforming of our curriculum in South Africa?
Evening, Tabo, and evening to the viewers. Let's just put the comments in context. I am talking to you on the sidelines of the National District Awards, which is an awards, a program run by the National Department of Education. It recognizes districts that have performed, well or have improved significantly in the past, couple of years. The awards follow a 1.5 days deliberations on how to recalibrate the education reform, lens in the country. You would agree with me that the word recalibrate, it's quite of an engineering nature and typical, things that the Germans have been best at. So what we've been doing in the 1.5 days has been to look at the preparedness of the districts to actually take the plans and the programs, the recovery plans and programs, and process them into actions in each of their jurisdictions. So there's about 75 districts in the country which take all the policies and are supposed to support, schools and classrooms and teachers to implement these important recovery initiatives. So at the center of this, of course, is curriculum, and there's a 3-part, or rather 3-phase adjustments that are being planned or envisaged or are underway in the Department of Basic Education, and by implication nationally. The first was made in 2020, which was called the reduction of, in fact, it involved the reduction of work that was expected of learners and teachers in classrooms because we had very little time to teach. In 2021, the department moved on to introduce what they call, or we call, the recovery curriculum. So further adjustments have been made to help the schools to recover what has been lost because classrooms could not teach all what was expected of them for learners at different grades. So the third phase actually involves what is an envisaged, progress that will be made in a coming couple of years, 5, 6 to 10 years, and that is the strengthened curriculum. The strengthened curriculum would seek to bring or address the imperatives of the recovery in closing the gaps that have emerged in the past couple of years, as well as integrating that with the imperatives that relate to the future curriculum. The future curriculum is based on imperative. It's actually based on global waves that are actually getting education systems to integrate the 4th industrial revolution, to integrate, the competencies of the future. And we're hard at work talking to other countries and researching across the world to see what of those elements are going to be brought in to the curriculum and how we have to prepare our teachers and classrooms and districts and so on to implement that in the medium to long term.
Right. 75 districts. In the previous conversation that we're having, for example, with unions and stakeholders within the education sector, was the fact that of these 75 districts, the degree of functionality and effectiveness varies depending on where you are and what resources are available and what capacity is there within the teachers and so on and so forth. How do we move forward to a point where this playing field is leveled, so that when we speak of strengthening of the curriculum, somebody who is in a rural school understands it the same way that a child who is in an urban school understands what the strengthening of a curriculum means?
Perhaps, Thabo, you should consider taking an education policy, career, because I think you bring up very important questions. The playing fields aren't level, and they're a result of the many histories of different, levels of, and efforts of development across the country. So you are right, of these 75 districts, you'll find a district in urban areas whose geographic coverage is very small, and so communication and movement across the schools is much easier. And you'll find a district in a province like Northern Cape, for instance, which geographic coverage is vast with very few number of schools, which means that moving between the points that we have to coordinate, it's a very difficult thing. The districts are also different in terms of their resourcing. So how many computers they have, how many cars they have, what sort of buildings they have, what sort of communication facilities they have. But, these kind of differences and the dynamics that play out are a result of, how our government and our governance is organized. So districts have to be resourced by the provinces and that sort of thing and so on. So you still have these differences. There was a big discussion yesterday and today on how actually we try and work towards some consistency in the shapes and size of districts across the country, as well as in their resourcing. So the National Department has actually put out norms and standards for districts in the past couple of years, and it has been advocating provinces to meet those norms and standards over the years. We know limited budgets and pace of implementing these things from across the provinces actually contribute towards this pace at which those are addressed. It's an issue that has been highlighted. But Thabo, there also are soft issues that you don't see with your naked eyes, like, ethos, the levels of professionalism, the skills, the commitment, in those. Those are some of the things that we've been talking about today. And the NECT has agreed to consider programs that would actually help in the professionalization of the district level. So the induction of the people who get appointed in districts, creation of platforms where we help the district people learn how to plan, monitor the systems, and that's how you improve the quality of the coordination of what happens in the school, and ultimately what actually the quality of teaching and learning that happens in the classrooms. So that's what we had gathered here to think about. And more importantly, all of us took as a starting point the fact that since COVID has hit the education system so hard, over and above the challenges that we had in the country, we actually had to recalibrate systems, approaches, tools that we have in these districts to take up this new challenge, to close the gap and get the system back on track to chase those NDP targets that we have.
Yeah. Looking at the quarterly labor survey that was released just a couple of weeks, checked it last week or so, the conversations and the reflections that emanate from that say what we are teaching our kids right now is not readying them for the type of jobs that we currently need, or at least that we currently have on offer. So they are trained for something else, but they can't occupy those jobs that are currently required in our economy, right? And the minister says, look, we are going to adopt a three-stream model of academic, occupational, and vocational pathways. Reflect for us as the trust. What do you think of that approach, and how that would respond to the challenges that South Africa currently faces as far as youth unemployment is concerned?
Yeah. So there are some of those things that, some of those challenges that can be addressed from the point of view or perspective of education, which I'll talk to, but there's also bigger aspects about the structural aspects relating to our economy. So, and those will have to do with what kind of jobs the economy actually provides. And if you take what the kids get taught in school and in universities on the one hand, and what the economy provides, then you're able to deal with the demand and supply, aspects which have to do with the both ends. Aligning this does not happen overnight. In fact, countries that have gotten it right have taken decades of time to get this alignment. So in South Africa and in education, for the past period, we had two streams, the academic and the vocational stream. So you could only follow these two streams, and most of our kids actually still follow the academic stream. So what has happened in the past couple of years is that the Department of Basic Education introduced the third stream, which is the technical, which adds on to the technical, opportunities that the learners can follow. So Thabo, let me say that in last year we've been helping the department to think through the introduction of this third stream, to go into schools to find out how ready they are to offer the third stream, because it's got to be done properly for these kids to come out and they're able to get the jobs that we want to get. So in terms of provision, in terms of supply, we're starting to meet that. But, we will have to wait for the kids that go through this third stream, and we have to adjust the numbers. So out of the 500,000, for instance, or 700,000 who set for matric, in a couple of years' time, we have to get a good proportion of that number taking the third stream. And that would help us, meet the demands from the economy. It's not an easy thing, more so given that the world is changing. There's much more. It's moving towards, it's taking more technological, dimensions, and therefore, what the education systems have to follow that up. The other intervention that we're making, it's actually moving towards what we call competency-based, curriculum. So, and we could take the better part of the night talking about that. But in simple terms, you're moving focus from just, knowledge to actually getting, specific competencies, kids to acquire specific competencies. And there are countries that have moved, in that direction in the world, whom we're talking to, and we're researching how well they've done, how they've gone about doing that. And in the medium term, we'll be shifting the focus and the implementation of the curriculum to a competency-based, curriculum.
Yeah. Of course, as you mentioned, those are the harder things. Those are the technical issues. There are some of the softer issues, maybe issues not so soft, but very important, around the governance. What was the reflection around the school governance and community involvement?
So the governance, and it's an Achilles heel in this country. So when we introduced school governing bodies in 1996, we thought that they would run as well as, the parent-teacher associations of the pre-democratic era, which were self-run and so on and so forth. We've hit some hurdles. There are instances where school governing bodies work very well. They work very well with the school management. But there are instances, and where they actually aren't working as well as they have been. It was anticipated. The truth is, the school governance fabric is actually a reflection of the broader, governance fabric in society. So the same persons who would sit on the school governing board are probably the same people who sit on a municipal council or that sort of thing. So in education, we do provide training to school governing bodies so that they know what their roles and responsibilities are. But generally, the quality of governance depends on many other things which are intertwined with the fabric of the society, and it's a moving target. In this conference, we've discussed how we need to tighten some of the legislation, and there is the amendment, bill, which is in process, through the parliamentary processes and so on for discussion, which will tighten, some of the governance provisions so that learning and teaching could happen, much more effectively and efficiently in the schools.
Yeah, and of course, a reflection on your work as the National Education Collaboration Trust. Since 2013, you came up with your Education Collaboration Framework, a set of objectives. It's not a box-ticking exercise, but when you look at how far you have come, have you achieved and ticked on some of the key issues of why you set out to put this trust together in the first place?
So the NECT was evaluated independently, and thanks to FirstRand, which commissioned one of our funders, actually, who commissioned an independent evaluation that was led by three eminent professors, one from the London School of Education, Professor Unde Halte, and two from locally, Professor Ralinala and Professor Tom. They've gone through about 14 months of evaluating the work of the NECT, and they've come out with what I think are very objective and valuable observations about the work of the NECT. There is a recognition that the NECT is a unique, structure, very, close to the DNA of, how we do development in South Africa, that brings different stakeholders together to address, difficult, issues. You don't find any such structure anywhere in the world. So that was appreciated, and they appreciated the fact that the NECT played a very, very effective role in galvanizing the efforts and, in fact, social capital across the country, from unions, from business, from NGOs, to help prop up the quality of education in the country. We have worked with in excess of 103,000 teachers in the country, and mainly primary school teachers, in the areas of languages, where we have developed extensive and deep, resources on reading improvement. And I can tell you that a good 86% of the schools across the country have gone through that program, and there is no way that won't see results, out of that. Our teachers have now been taught how to approach the big challenge of reading, so that what they do with learners on a daily basis do help the kids to move towards a point where we can meet the target that the president has set, which is every 10-year-old should read for meaning. But it's a process, and it's a process that starts in the classroom and has to be supported at the school level and must be supported even at home. So we've made quite significant, progress in that regard. We've worked with in excess of 800 subject advisors. There's about 3,000 subject advisors in the country. So 800 of those have been taken through programs that help them, do their work of supporting teachers better. So with these key cogs and many others that, won't have the time to, identify, if you bring all these various, interventions on these various important cogs, you definitely see a system that performs better, and we've confirmed that from the over 250 district level officials that had convened here in the past 1.5 days.